Are you listening? Damn. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And welcome into another episode of the Damn Podcast here on the 24/7 Sports Podcast Network and powered by BeaverBlitz.com. I'm your host, Carter Bahns. I'm joined, as always, by BeaverBlitz.com publisher Angie Machado, who is going to try to be our resident USC expert today, I think.
Yeah, I guess.
We were hoping to have a USC expert guest with us, but last minute didn't work out. So we're a little frazzled, but we're going to try to power through this and provide some sort of insight on the Trojans, I guess. But Angie, how excited are you for Saturday's matchup against the seventh best team in the land?
Yeah, I'm super excited. I think a lot of you guys know I grew up a USC fan. I don't really know why I became a USC fan, but I loved USC. So anytime that I get to Corvallis, it's always kind of fun. Obviously, for at least the last 30 years, I have been more of an Oregon State fan, but just a good team. I think they're on the up right now with Lincoln Riley, and there's a lot of excitement around that program. So like we've talked about here on the pod, it might be the last time that USC comes to Corvallis for the foreseeable future. So I'm excited to see a sold out Reeser. The students are back. It should be a rowdy, crazy crowd. And while I'm not feeling as confident as I was preseason that this would be a win, and we'll get to that a little later, anything can happen when USC comes to town. So I'm anxious for this game.
No shortage of talking points ahead of what I think is Oregon State's biggest game of the 2022 season. I mean, we're looking at a top 10 team coming into Reeser. Oregon State still undefeated, looking to continue to build momentum as it opens Pac-12 play this week. This is about as tough of a conference opponent as you can get for week one of that portion of your schedule. So really, I think as far as we're concerned, this is Oregon State's biggest game of the year. I know they've got Utah looming next week. They've got a rivalry game against Oregon later on. Washington looks pretty good, but for our purposes, I think this is probably the game of the year, right?
Yeah, I mean, Carter, I think you can feel it. You've covered this team now 4 years. I know your schedule has gotten crazy busy with media requests. Mine has. I think I did 3 different hits yesterday. One being for CBS Sports HQ, which will air Friday. So we'll make sure to pop that over in the lodge as well. But you always know it's a big game when all the big time media outlets start asking for you to come talk about the Beavs. So this has been a busy week for both of us, as well as content, tons of content coming out. It just has that excitement feel to it.
It really does have that big game feel. And you hit it right on the head. I mean, I don't think I've been this busy during a game week in
maybe
a
ever,
long
Carter.
time. Maybe
I
ever.
Don't know. Yeah, because you haven't been around. I mean, I think the last time I was this busy was probably in the 2012 season. So it is a big, big week.
It's a good kind of busy. There are weeks where I don't mind working until 9 p.m. every night, and this is one of them, because we're previewing a game that I think has a lot of nuance to it when you talk about the kind of the bigger overarching storylines of USC moving on to the Big Ten eventually, Lincoln Riley bringing this program back to prominence, Oregon State being undefeated to start the year. I mean, there are a lot of big picture elements at play, but then on the field, you also have a matchup against what appears to be two of the best offenses in the conference, potentially the best in the country in USC, improving teams across the board. It really does have all of the makings of, if not a classic in terms of, close score, it just has the feeling of being one of those games that we remember for a long time.
Yeah. I think it's, like I said, it's watching that USC. I guess I thought preseason that this team would probably be working out some kinks, new coach, new system, new personnel. That offense looks scary good at USC, and we'll dive into that here in a minute. But Oregon State, you can't knock on that offense either. So I know we'll get down to that in the USC side of things here in a little bit, but yeah, unstoppable. I'm looking through our notes here just because we're kind of winging this since we don't have our USC expert here. The Trojans are putting up 40 plus points and 500 yards per game so far this season, Carter. And they have played Fresno State, Stanford, and Rice. Rice, isn't crazy good, but they've a Pac-12 game already. What are your thoughts when you look at that offense?
Yeah, well, first of all, I just want to shout out everybody in the YouTube chat for dropping all sorts of great stuff. We're going to touch on as much of that as possible. I think we'll have time to get to all of those comments and questions, given that we are kind of winging the first half of this episode this week. But yeah, so shout out to everybody for following us on YouTube, and if you're listening to us on the audio side. We apologize. It was super short notice that we were going live on YouTube. So if you missed us, thanks for finding us there. Hopefully we're making for some good drive down to Corvallis content, or your Friday evening content. If you're watching other college football games and listening to us, who knows? Doesn't matter. We're here to provide this preview for you, no matter what time you listen to us. But
and I'm drinking water, by the way. I just didn't want you guys thinking it was 3:00 and I was drinking a cocktail already.
Yeah, I've got some sparkling water here from Costco myself. But yeah, that USC offense, Angie, that you just mentioned. I mean, they've scored at least 40 points in every game they've played. Obviously, we're still early on. They've played 3 games, but 40 points in each game is about as good of a start offensively to a season as you can ask for. They're averaging over 500 yards per game. I mean, this Trojans offense is just absolutely loaded with talent. The scheme is obviously substantially better under Lincoln Riley than it was ever in Clay Helton's tenure, and certainly last year when Oregon State was facing an interim staff too. The scheme was not as top notch as you're seeing under one of the best coaches in college football. So I think there's a lot of challenges personnel wise, scheme wise, you name it, for Oregon State to face this week. And I know that they have their hands full.
Yeah, the biggest one though, you can look at the Jordan Addison. They have Travis Dye, who transferred in from Oregon. This is, basically turned into Transfer U, just with all the new names. But the one that stands out to me, who really has proven to be the real deal, is quarterback Caleb Williams. He can beat you with his arm. He can beat you with his legs. And that's what concerns me a little bit about this matchup, is that if Oregon State isn't able to establish a pass rush, what he'll be able to do in that run-pass option offense. Yeah,
Lincoln Riley kind of built this roster in a very 2022 way, I think. Yeah. This is a case of a coach coming in and immediately bringing with him arguably the best quarterback in the country. I mean, I know Bryce Young's back at Alabama after winning the Heisman last year, but I think Caleb Williams is right in that conversation already in 22, and obviously played at Oklahoma when Lincoln Riley was there. So kind of made sense for him to land in Los Angeles. And he has proven to be the real deal. I mean, I don't have his stat line pulled up, unfortunately, but I know he's thrown for 8 touchdowns already. I think he's up above 800 yards. His completion percentage is above 70%. So, I mean, as far as quarterback play goes, you really can't ask for anything more there. He's holding on to the ball too. I mean, he hasn't thrown an interception. And in fact, USC's offense hasn't turned the ball over a single time through 3 games. So just the leadership that they're getting from that caliber of quarterback, a 5-star guy. He is living up to every expectation that Trojan fans had for him.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So I was on a national radio show yesterday, and they brought up Chance Nolan and Caleb Williams as 2 of the top quarterbacks in the Pac-12, if not country, right now with their stats. Mm-hmm. But they also brought up Chance Nolan's 2 picks. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, though. Those 2 picks came in deflected balls. Correct.
Well, one of them was
he was throwing out of bounds.
It was the quote unquote chili dip throw to the sideline.
That's right. The one he was trying to chuck out of bounds. That's right. And then one was a tip ball, I believe, to Tyjon Lindsey.
Yeah, it should have been pass interference on Boise State, and Lindsey couldn't hold on to it.
So okay. Anyway, How are you thinking about their defense? However, I think if there is a chink in this USC program, it is still especially that defensive front, Carter. Do you see that? Oregon State was able to gash them last year. This is a different Oregon State offense. Do you think that defensive front has improved? What is your kind of off the cuff thought on that?
Any defensive line that has Tuli Tuipulotu on it, I think is going to be pretty good. I mean, the guy is an absolute beast and probably one of the best linemen in college football. He was a freshman All-American a couple of years ago, all Pac-12 first teamer, I believe, last year, and has picked up right where he left off. And I think he is the guy on that front seven. I know they've gotten some performances from a couple of other players over the last couple of weeks that they didn't necessarily expect. Solomon Bird, I believe, is the name of one of the linebackers or linemen. It's again, the exact names are slipping my mind here, but no, that defensive front has improved from last year. The back end of the defense in particular, I mean, they brought in Mekhi Blackman from Colorado. He's already got a pick. This defense has forced 10 turnovers through 3 games. So while the offense is taking care of the ball, the defense is taking it away. And I think you put all of that together and you've got a defense that is stronger against the run and is clearly elite against the pass. It's going to be tough for the Beavers offense to move the ball against them.
Yeah, that's, Oregon State has 8 turnovers. So like I said, this game on paper is a lot more evenly matched, I believe, than when you actually kind of watch the two teams. But what I'm anxious to see is, this is a USC team that is built to go and score fast and really kind of knock you off your feet before you even really figure out that you're behind. So I think Oregon State really is going to need to control that line of scrimmage. And then it'll be interesting. There was a discussion in the lodge today about potentially kind of hitting them with their own 1-2 punch. If Oregon State could get out early, how that how the team culture will adapt. Will they fight back? Will they be stunned? This is a team that I feel that Lincoln has helped with the culture of the team and but again, this is a group that has been kind of piecemeal together just over the past couple months. It'll be really interesting to see how Oregon State attacks this.
It's a good point about USC getting off to strong starts because I believe in the first 3 games they have scored on their first 3 drives and have some crazy first quarter stat as far as touchdowns are concerned as well. So I've seen this question already come up in the YouTube chat. I'll throw this one up here if you're watching us live on YouTube. The comment from Patrick Moen here: if the Beavs win the coin toss, they have to elect to receive, in my opinion, says Patrick. And I completely agree there. I think the fact that USC has got off to these hot starts, and obviously it's, carrying over the rest of the way, Oregon State has to do everything in its power to score early and often. And usually we see the Beavers, if they win, defer to the second half, kick the ball off and take it in the second half. I don't think that's the approach this week. I think the approach is putting up points early. If you can get out to a 7-0 advantage, you're throwing USC off script right away because this is a Trojans team that is used to playing from ahead. I don't even know if this team has trailed this year. Yeah. So I think any chance
USC likes to do that. USC,
right.
That's what they've been doing. They've been getting the ball if they can to start the game and then scoring as quickly as they can. So I think that definitely has to be the Beavers, if they're able to win that coin toss, get out, control the line of scrimmage, hold on to the football and score early and knock them off their kind of their usual, like you said, script.
I'm curious, Angie, what we just talked about with the USC defense, the turnover piece, and this obviously has been kind of USC's calling card so far. I guess the Trojans' calling card has been their offense, but the turnover margin is just kind of another key to, I think, their hot start. But defensively, forcing 10 turnovers and returning a couple of interceptions for touchdowns. They have multiple pick sixes already. I'm curious for you, somebody who obviously has watched college football for decades and has followed it closely at Oregon State for a while. How much of that do you think at USC is luck. I mean, turnovers can be fluky sometimes, and they're a talented group. They're schemed well by Alex Grinch, but at the end of the day, sometimes you're just in the right place at the right time. So where do you kind of draw that line when you're looking at a team and you see they force 10 turnovers? Where do you draw that line between luck and skill?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's both. I mean, USC definitely has a lot of talent in their defensive backfield. This is a team built. I mean, we've said it year in, year out that they were this scary team just because they had so much talent on the roster that if anybody, they were kind of the sleeping giant. But when I look at turnovers, you look at a couple things. First, their DBs play very aggressive. But second, you have teams playing from behind and sometimes behind by quite a bit. So they have to be throwing the ball. So that just ups the odds of getting some turnovers when you have teams desperate and they're chucking the ball up, trying to make something happen. So I think when you see teams start getting in desperation mode, they start trying to throw the ball, try to score quickly, that's what's going to happen. And it just kind of keys in. Teams become more one-dimensional. USC knows that they're not going to run the ball anymore because they need to put up 2, 3, 4 touchdowns. They know that these are going to be pass plays, and it gives them a little bit better shot to read some eyes and decide which way it's going. So I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, we've seen too. I mean, a tip ball, there's a lot of luck involved as well. But I just think when you have teams playing from behind, it becomes a lot easier than to kind of create those turnovers and kind of make your own luck.
I like the point you made there about USC getting up early and forcing teams to throw the ball, because that's oftentimes how you get back into games. That's how you manage the clock when you're playing from behind. But when Oregon State went down to the Coliseum last year and frankly just, kind of obliterated that USC team, particularly in the second half, a lot of what the Beavers were getting was on the ground. And again, I don't have these stats from last year pulled up, but I believe Oregon State was right around 300 yards on the ground. I mean, It was a dominant showing in the trenches with Oregon State's offensive line just setting the tone and getting just incredible push. I think that was, thinking back to last year, that was one of the main takeaways you and I had, was just how dominant the Beavers looked at the point of attack. So Oregon State, with its running game, maybe not necessarily being as efficient this year as it would hope and as we become accustomed to, and USC forcing teams to throw the ball a lot more, do you feel like this game might look a little different from Oregon State's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think Oregon State's going to need to establish a run, because I think it's really, really going to be important that they control the clock and kind of grind out wins, keep it ground and pound kind of game. But this team isn't the same as last year. I think last year's Oregon State squad had a better offensive front. I think BJ Baylor had better vision. And not to say that Deshaun Fenwick and Damian Martinez and Jam Griffin can't get there. I just haven't seen the vision from them. They're missing holes. If you're in the lodge at BeaverBlitz, Peter71 has been doing an amazing breakdown weekly of the offensive line and the trench report, and actually showing in film where the running backs have missed their read. And it's caused either a loss on the play or a very short gain, which if they would have made the right read, it would have been a big gain. So that is where BJ Baylor, I think, excelled, was the fact that he was able to read the field, read his holes, but he also had maybe a little stronger offensive line. I want to see the Beavs get there. I want to see them be able to run the ball, because I think controlling the clock and keeping the ball out of USC's offense is going to be a key to this game. That being said, this year's team, Carter, you and I talked about this earlier today off the record here, was this team's, I would say, is more balanced than last year's squad, though. The passing game is coming along, and the opportunity to make some big passing plays downfield is something that last year's team didn't have. So I think you mix in a few of those when it looks like a smart thing to do, but hopefully those running backs can find their lanes and really establish a run. And, this is a game that I'd love to see a couple, 7-minute, 8-minute drives.
Clint Moses made a great point in the chat, and I'll throw it up on the screen here, that it's kind of it kind of foreshadows our keys to the game, I think, but it fits into this conversation we're having right now about Oregon State trying to move the ball against USC. And Clint says USC has been giving up explosive plays, both running and passing, but has been called bend but don't break. Oregon State, meanwhile, is 14 for 14 in the red zone. And this is a great point, because USC, you look at their scores, the amount of points they give up to Rice, Fresno State, you say, okay, that defense is pretty good. Stanford, I think only managed like 24 points against them, around, 24, 30, somewhere in that range. But these teams are moving the ball. They're getting down into the red zone and onto USC's half of the field, but then those drives are just kind of stalling. They're settling for field goals. They're turning the ball over. And I think that's promising for Oregon State because it has been a strength of the Beavers to score when they get down into the red zone. The Beavers, I think, are going to be able to move the ball against USC. And, I know they've forced 10 turnovers, and I know they have an all-American caliber player up front in Tuipulotu, but USC isn't a team that is going to force you into a bunch of 3-and-outs.
No.
It's the kind of team that is going to let you move the ball, but then come up with big plays when they're needed. And I think for Oregon State's offense, opportunities arise there where, the Beavers have gotten big plays through the air. We saw them last week kind of break things open in the running game a couple of times with some 20-yard runs. Those are the kinds of plays that will beat a defense like that. A team that's a bend but don't break kind of team. Well, if your offense is predicated on the big play, that's how you score touchdowns because you're not going to be able to do it down in the red zone. So I like that matchup from Oregon State's perspective, just because I think the Beavers will be able to move the ball. And if they can break a big play or two, you could see them playing a much tighter game than USC is used to, which, again, like I said earlier, kind of throws the Trojans off script, which is a key to beating a team that has a ton of confidence right now.
Yeah, and they have a ton of confidence. Their fans have a ton of confidence. If you haven't been over to the Peristyle, it's our 24/7 sister site for USC. Their fans are pretty confident over there that this is going to be pretty much a cakewalk. So I don't know, Carter. I mean, that's why they play the game, and sometimes those are the fun ones to go to, just because anything can happen, especially with Oregon State. I feel that this is, last year was a great win for Oregon State on the road, but I feel that this team is better, maybe better matchup wise than last year's team. I think Oregon State secondary matches up actually very well with the USC's offensive wide receivers. So I'm anxious to see what this game, like I said, if they can handle Caleb Williams. To me, the defense's biggest problem this year, and Oregon State has that bend don't break defense, is the fact that Caleb Williams can move. And so mobile quarterbacks have been a little iffy. But then I go back to Boise State. That early Boise State game was Oregon State completely stuffed their Hank Bachmeier and gave him no time. If we can see a little bit of pressure like that, put some pressure on Caleb Williams, it could get interesting real quick.
Perhaps another foreshadowing moment for our keys to the game. A couple of questions.
Remember, we were supposed to be joined by USC football staff. So Carter and I are doing the best we can.
Questions coming in the chat about some injuries and who's going to be out. Are certain players coming back? We're going to get to that in a few minutes in the second half of the show. Provide some newsy kind of stuff that came out from Corvallis throughout the week. But wrapping up this first half where we just kind of deep dive into USC itself, want to touch a little bit on the job Lincoln Riley has done there, because we've talked at length already about what USC has done on the field this year, the talent that squad has, and for good reason, because they're playing like a college football playoff contender. But the program as a whole obviously has been all over the news this offseason, whether it's the announcement to join the Big Ten in 2024, whether it was the hiring of Lincoln Riley, the transfer portal extraordinaire that he pulled off, bringing all of these former 5-star, 4-star players into the program. Lincoln Riley has, in his first 6 months on the job, I think had a more productive career than the last couple of USC head coaches combined. Is that fair to say? I mean, the way he has turned this program around in such a short time is absolutely remarkable.
Yeah, well, he's also been met with some good timing with the whole NIL stuff, the transfer portal. I mean, there's been a lot of moving pieces to this to make his job easier, but I do think he brings that energy. He brings an exciting offense, which obviously is always going to be a high flying offense, is going to sell tickets and get the fan base excited. But I think more than anything, he's actually really helped that culture, the team culture. And we've talked a lot about Jonathan Smith doing that in his past couple years, and how, and I say Oregon State was a broken team when Jonathan Smith took it over. And I would say far worse than USC ever was. But Lincoln Riley, this is a team that's been through several coaches. They've lost games. And these are young men that aren't coming to USC expecting to lose any games. I mean, they are 5-star kids that are been told their whole life they've won everything they've played. But don't underestimate the job he's done in building that culture, bringing in all of those 5-star transfers. So to be able to keep that morale high with your own team and your locker room when you're bringing in transfers, it's not an easy task, because you have guys in the locker room that still feel that they can get the job done. And then all of a sudden you're bringing in new guys, and to keep that team morale, that locker room on your side when you're brand new like that, it is not an easy job.
To that point, and this came out of the USC game notes or report at uscfootball.com, the 24/7 sports affiliate for USC. I can't remember which of those two it came from, because I've been on both of those things consistently throughout the last few days. But to that point, one of the things that I saw this week is that the team has absolutely 100% bonded around the fact that everybody in that locker room is A, either new to the program, or B, is learning a new scheme. And the fact that everybody is on the same page in that, in that grain is, it's something that they have bonded around. And I think that has been kind of one of those pillars that the USC culture has been built upon, is, hey, we're all on the same page here. We were, you guys were all 4- and 5-star recruits. You were all the best players at your high schools, but everybody's competing for jobs right now. And everybody is learning the same things at the same time. Nobody has a leg up. There's no coach's favorites or whatnot. I mean, Caleb Williams maybe coming over from Oklahoma. I would assume he was probably guaranteed the starting job. But no, I think everybody is kind of on the same page, and they all feel like they're working towards the same goal, which we have seen at other programs. I mean, Oregon is a prime example of talented guys coming in, coaches coming in with all of this buzz and whatnot, and things just don't quite click. And, in Eugene, that has led to key letdown losses. And, we've seen that culture break a couple of times, most recently under Mario Cristobal. But Lincoln Riley is having none of that. And I think while he built this roster in a very unique way, and maybe a way that we haven't seen in college football before, he's done an incredible job of keeping everybody together, which I think when you look at the way he built that roster, that's not a guarantee. Yeah.
With that many egos, I could say Jonathan Smith has done similar, building his roster, but it's been a totally different. Coach Smith has been building it with, the 3-star, 4-star, 3-star guys that you build up, develop. Lincoln Riley was like, okay, we're going to go buy the best team we can get right now with our NIL, and winning helps. When you're 3-0, dude, everybody loves the coach when you're 3-0. And it's when you start facing some adversity is when things can maybe go a little sideways. So let's see how, this Lincoln Riley love fest continues. If they go 10-2, I'm sure Trojan Nation and all the players will be jacked up, but, should things go a little sideways, which I'm not saying it will, but that's when things can maybe the shimmer of that gold maybe can tarnish a little bit.
One last point before we move on to the next segment here is, man, it's sad to think about this, Angie, but this could be USC's last trip to Corvallis for the foreseeable future. I mean, I'm not going to go so far as to say this is their last trip to Corvallis ever, but it's hard to imagine a world where a Big Ten USC team makes the trip out to Corvallis to play a team that, obviously on the West Coast has been a middle of the road program at best. It's one of those situations where, I mean, Oregon State went out to Columbus to play Ohio State. It went to Ann Arbor to play Michigan. Those kinds of teams aren't coming into Corvallis. So I think it's unfortunate to think about, but have you kind of come to grips with the fact that this might be the last time we ever see the Trojans at Reser Stadium?
Yeah. I mean, I don't, there's no reason for them to come to Corvallis. And that's one of the the things when you actually are looking at scheduling, USC doesn't like coming to Corvallis. It's a trip. It's usually the weather's going to be good for them this time around, but sometimes the weather's bad.
They generally
really,
lose when they're ranked
they
in the
have
top
some
10.
yeah they run into major buzzsaws named Sammy Strotter and Jacquizz Rogers, but teams that are going to travel out of conference to take on an out of conference Power 5 opponent, they're doing so a lot of times because they have a big alumni base in that location, or it's a big recruiting base for them. So it makes sense. Oregon State, Corvallis, Portland even is not a big alumni base for USC. It is not a big recruiting base for USC. I don't think we see them unless something changes down the road and we get a mega conference or something like that. But no, I think this might be the last time for quite a while that we see the Trojans in town.
USC is probably thrilled about that.
Oh, completely.
Oregon State fans maybe in some way are thrilled that they're not going to have to see USC, a rebuilt USC program every year. But I think as far as the tradition element goes and kind of the history of these two programs and everything that makes college football great, it is really sad to see something like that go, because that is what makes college football great. You have this team down in Southern California, this absolute powerhouse that has all of the resources in the world, has probably the best recruiting base of any school, not named Alabama or Georgia. And every couple of years it goes up to, farmtown Oregon, and in front of a couple of thousands of fans, it gets upset on national TV by a true freshman. That's what makes college football great. And the fact that we might not see that between these two programs again after this year.
Yeah.
I think it's a great opportunity for Oregon State to get one last, throw one last punch and get one last program defining win over the Trojans. But moving forward, it's sad to think that we probably won't see that again.
Yeah, and that's Game Day did a really cool segment this last weekend on the Sun Belt. They called them the Fun Belt and how they were going in ruining parties. But the whole resurgence of the Sun Belt Conference really was built around regional rivalries and kind of those. And that, you're right, that is what makes college football great, and that's what we're losing right now. So hopefully, at some point, the powers that be realize that maybe regional rivalries are better for the whole sport than these giant mega conferences. And at some point, USC, well, maybe USC won't care as much, but, the rest of the Big Ten, I think, is going to be scratching their head when they're sitting in a Rose Bowl with 10,000 fans. Dude, USC, good riddance. Or not USC, UCLA, good riddance, because, gosh, that's an embarrassment.
Are we ranting?
Yes, we are. Okay, let's
ranting
talk Beavers.
a little bit?
Okay, let's talk some Beavers. I sound like a grumpy old lady, so let's talk some Beavers.
Before we do that, let's remind everyone that BeaverBlitz.com is the place to be throughout Oregon State's 2022 football season. The Beavers are off to a strong start, and so are we. You guys have helped us grow to an all-time subscriber base high. So thank you to everyone who has already jumped on the Beaver Blitz bandwagon. We're glad to have you, and we want more. Let's bring more Oregon State fans into the mix, grow this community. Those of you who are watching us live on YouTube right now, I mean, you guys are helping us crush our numbers on YouTube right now. We are growing so quickly.
We need to hit 1,000.
Let's get to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube by what's a good goal, Angie? By the end of October? I don't know.
Yeah,
at this rate, I mean, shout out to these listeners right now.
You listeners that are on YouTube watching us, thank you, and help us spread the word. And then the Lodge, yes, we are an all-time high at Beaver Blitz, and the Lodge is becoming more and more active and more fun. So we thank all of you guys for that too.
News from throughout the week in Corvallis. Angie was down there on Monday to take in Jonathan Smith's weekly press conference. Went for about 12 minutes this week. So kind of a standard Jonathan Smith Monday, I guess. But a couple of newsworthy points came from that. And this will answer a bunch of the questions we've got in the chat already. And Angie, since you were there, I'll let you break the news on the injury front here.
Yeah, I was actually surprised because Coach Smith led with Trey Lowe and Luke Musgrave will be out this week. And I actually thought we might get the old day-to-day from him. So he called them out on Monday. And if you're a Beaver fan, which I think most of you guys are here in this chat, what stuck out to me was Coach Smith saying, Luke Musgrave, he's not ready to say he's out for the season yet. So to me and Carter, when I told Carter that, Carter had the same thought. When coaches say that, that's coach speak for more than likely it will probably happen at some point. But not good news for Luke Musgrave that he even threw that out, that it would be, he's not ready to say out yet. All the other injuries, Marco Brewer, Andrew Chatfield, who am I missing? There was another.
Riley Sharp left in the middle of the game. Who else missed? Everett Hayes left. Obviously, he missed that extra point in the field goal and then didn't return. So he was lumped in there with that group.
So yeah, he said those guys are all day today. Now, the good news on all of those is that nothing visible. I mean, it wasn't like anybody had braces on or slings. So I did see a question about Trey Lowe earlier here about asking if it was a non-football injury. And from what I heard earlier, it's not physical injury. I actually do believe it is. I believe Coach Smith said a couple weeks ago it was a re-aggravated injury. Trey has had a ton of knee issues over the years, so he did not say it was knee. So I am not going to say it's knee, but he said he re-aggravated an injury. And
that was in week 1. So I don't think either of us really noticed him leave with an injury. I think that was probably something that just kind of cropped up after the game. And unless you noticed, maybe he missed the fourth quarter or something. I can't remember, but that was one. I remember that Monday press conference afterwards being like, "Oh, really? I didn't even notice that." Isaiah Newell also missed last week.
That is a non-football injury, is what we were told, but he was at the game in Portland.
And he's been listed as kind of day to day, week to week. So without Trey Lowe there, maybe you see Isaiah Newell crack that rotation at running back if they want to get a fourth guy in there.
Yeah. All day today, Coach Smith is going to keep everything super close to the vest on that. And then one thing Coach Smith wanted to bring up too was just the fact that the students are back. And so school started.
Angie, I'm going to interrupt you real quick. Sorry, but we forgot Alton Julian.
Alton Julian. Yes.
So Alton Julian was before the Montana State game, I think Jonathan Smith kind of hinted towards maybe a potential return for that game against the Bobcats. I think we had this debate on Sunday after the game about, whether you want to throw him to the Wolves against USC or risk re-aggravating the injury, bringing back a week early. I wouldn't be shocked to see Alton Julian this week.
Yeah, me too.
Maybe in a limited role, but
yes. And he was completely suited up for the game against Montana State. So good call on that.
All right. Move along. Sorry. I
school
interrupted you there, but that's
no worries.
That was an important one.
I interrupt you half the time, Carter, so it's all good. Home field advantage. Students are back in session. School started yesterday, Wednesday, for Oregon State students. And Coach Smith actually addressed the fact that, yes, school started, and that means that he's already talked to the team. There are a lot of distractions now that all the students are back. There's really no homework. So he said there will be things going on Wednesday night and Thursday night and Friday night. So,
although Friday night they will be staying at the team hotel in where are they staying now? Lebanon?
Yeah, something like that.
I think so. I can't remember for sure.
But just trying to keep them kind of focused on and you know what? Past teams I would have been worried about. This team is so veteran and such a strong leadership from within. I don't really worry about, especially the starters, the 2 deep partying. So and they'll. Yeah. I think they would crack down. I think Jaden Grant might go ahead and just bench someone himself if somebody was out partying.
A 7th-year guy, maybe he has the leverage and the right to do so.
Yeah, I mean, I just like the strength of the player-led leadership, and these guys have things dialed in. They are wearing the same uniform combo they wore in 2008. So black lids, orange jerseys, black pants.
Yep.
Carter, you like that look?
Yeah. So you mentioned, kind of the fact that they've got distractions now, school's in session.
And I guess there's a lot more girls on campus too. So there's a lot more distractions.
As far as distractions go, I mean, the history between these two programs could be kind of thrown into that mix, I guess. But Jonathan said they're not showing them 2008 highlights. They're not rolling the tape from '06. They're not breaking out I don't even know if they have film from the '60s, the Giant Killers, that 3-0 win. But they're not.
We do on our TikTok channel.
Do we actually?
Yes, I believe we do. Anyway, maybe
great content on
maybe
I
just gave something away, but I
yeah.
think we do. But anyway, okay.
Yeah, no, great content on the BeaverBlitz TikTok this week, by the way. I'll throw that out there. But no, they're not reliving or rehashing any of the history there.
No David and Goliath with Sammy Stroughter giving stones to everybody. Dang it.
But the fact that they're wearing the same uniforms, I'm like, okay, so somebody in there is aware that, they wore the black helmets, the orange jerseys, the black pants. Somebody in the athletic department within the football program is very aware of that, whether that was a player-led decision to wear those combinations, whether that came from the equipment staff, I don't know. But
the equipment staff's been there since like '98, so they are aware of all the history.
That was basically the extent of the stuff that came from Jonathan Smith's press conference. A lot of stuff, was just directed at scouting USC and everything. And if you're really curious about the coach's comments and whatnot on the Trojans, you can head to BeaverBlitz.com. We've literally never had more content during a game week, so no shortage of stuff there if you want to read up on what they're saying about USC. But some of the other interviews that we got throughout the week, Brian Lindgren, Trent Bray, both the coordinators, of course, and then some of the team captains. My takeaways from those: the offense is still not satisfied with where the running game is. We talked to Jake Levengood. I asked him specifically, is it an offensive line problem? Is it the running backs not seeing the holes? And it got kind of the answer I expected, and it's, everybody's working together, and it's, nobody's clicking, nobody's firing on all cylinders quite yet. Not necessarily entirely concerned, just because I think last year we saw it take the O-line a couple of games to get rolling. I think the running backs will develop better vision as the season goes on. Damian Martinez is still a true freshman, mind you. So, Angie and I have both been saying, hey, maybe he breaks out against USC like Quiz did. Not going to predict it, but it's a couple of games into his career. Maybe he starts to put things together. So the running game.
Speaking of Quiz, I just have to give a little plug because tomorrow we run staff picks, and we may or may not have a guest picker by the name of Quiz. Just stay tuned.
Maybe not. We'll see. Hey, we may or may not have multiple guest pickers this week.
We may or may not have multiple guest pickers.
Do we have that many Benny Beaver heads to go around? I mean,
I don't know, man. I don't know.
I'm just
saying. I pulled out some stops. The old Rolodex is flying this week, Carter.
I love it. That's the BeaverBlitz staff picks will be up on the site Friday morning as per usual. Defensively, yes. Trent Bray really emphasized the fact that this game presents challenges in all three levels. The defensive line is going to be tasked with going up against a USC offensive line that brought back a ton of talent from last year. I know they've had some injuries at left tackle, but I think they're pretty confident about their ability to move guys around. They've shown improvement there in protecting Caleb Williams. So Oregon State's pass rush certainly has a pretty tough challenge there. In the defensive backfield, obviously defending Jordan Addison, going up against a passing game that's led by Caleb Williams is a challenge. Trent Bray addressed that as well. And he was asked, actually, this was a kind of a fun question from Nick Dashel the other day to Trent Bray at that interview. He asked Trent to compare Caleb Williams to a quarterback that he schemed against before. And, Trent kind of took a second to think about it and threw Marcus Mariota out there. And obviously, if you're comparing anyone to a former Heisman Trophy winner, that says a lot.
Yeah, Marcus is truly a great one. But so Carter, I just want to ask you this because I actually said this yesterday on one of I think it was Pac-12 radio, or I don't know. Like I said, it's been crazy. So I am intrigued by this matchup with Alex Grinch, Trent Bray, and then Lincoln Riley, Jonathan Smith. I think this is such a chess match with these guys. I think they're all very good at what they do, and they're all thinking way ahead of, what's going on in the field. So I'm anxious to see how this plays out. Do you see this as a chess match between the coaches?
100%. I mean, these are some of the best coaches in college football going up against each other right now. I mean, Brian Lindgren is very highly regarded as one of the better offensive coordinators out west, and if not in the country. Alex Grinch, of course, has I think been one of the standards in defensive coaching for a long time now. Lincoln Riley, of course, as I said earlier, is widely considered to be among the best head coaches in college football. And Jonathan Smith has built this program up from the ashes. So you have coaches all across the board who have proven their ability, who are very, widely and highly regarded. There is going to be certainly an element of trying to outcoach the other team. And this year, I feel particularly confident about Jonathan Smith's ability to go up against a staff like that, because I mean, you only have to look 2 weeks ago for a prime example of Jonathan Smith just flat out coaching another team. I mean, Oregon State out coached Fresno State at the end of
and
that
that's
game.
A veteran, very good coach in Tedford.
Yeah. So yes, I see I see the chess match there that you're alluding to.
I think it'll be really interesting. Just kind of changing gears though, just to give fans that maybe were at Boise State a few weeks ago and said that the sound system was not good. One thing that was announced this week is that they are bringing in a temporary sound system for the remainder of the season. So that they've been testing it all week. And when I spoke to Sarah Elcano, she was really excited about what that will bring. And then they also announced next year they'll have different lighting. LED lighting system is coming in for the stadium in 2023. So a couple more updates, but the sound system is great news for all those that will be in Corvallis on Saturday night.
My thoughts on that: for one, the sound system very much needed. I've heard complaints from a lot of fans saying, "Oh, we were up in section 222 and we couldn't hear a thing from the PA system." And I mean, I get it. Like it totally makes sense when you think about it. The speakers are all on that side of the stadium, and in the past it hadn't been a problem because there was a giant grandstand, 60 yards across the field that was kind of reverberating the sound and sending it back to the east side of the stadium. But now that that's not there, all of that sound just kind of gets lost. And so if you're sitting up in the wings of Reeser, or if you're kind of under the balcony there on the lower section, I can see how that might be a concern. So putting 40 plus speakers on that bottom row of seats on the new side, right below the temporary press boxes, will it will send sound back that way. And so I think I think that'll fix things in a big way. It'll probably make things a lot louder in the press box too, because we're going to have a bunch of speakers like 2 rows below us now. So I'm curious how that's going to play out.
Hopefully we can hear the DJ even better, because the DJ has been on point lately. Okay, Carter, I know everyone in chat and everybody listening want to know what your keys to the game are. Offensively, what is your main takeaway, key to the game?
Okay, so this is, again, Angie and I always, we come up with our keys. I put mine in the rundown, but I kind of let her surprise me if she has something else. So I'll give mine first. Angie, I don't know if you've got something different here, but mine it goes back to the point that somebody made in the chat earlier about how USC has kind of been a bend but don't break kind of defense, and teams haven't really had much success against them in the red zone. My key to the game offensively for Oregon State: don't leave any points unscored. You have to value every opportunity you get in a shootout type of game like this could be. So Oregon State has to limit turnovers. They have to maximize their possessions. Defensively, you got to try to take it away a time or two. Not to give away my defensive key or anything there, but creating and taking advantage of as many possessions as you can offensively is absolutely key in a shootout. And when you do get down to the red zone, like I think Oregon State will be able to do on a regular basis, you have to capitalize on touchdowns. Settling for 3 points is not going to do it against USC. Turning it over is not going to do it. And we saw that kill Stanford a couple of weeks ago. The Cardinal ended up losing by 13, but I think had they capitalized on their opportunities in the red zone, they would have scored enough points to win that game. So Oregon State being perfect in the red zone so far is, it's something that the Beavers can hang their hat on, but it's definitely going to be important this week to keep that trend alive. So
Okay,
do you have
I
do you have
do actually have a
something
different one.
similar? Or, okay.
Well, that is important, and I don't want to say that it's not, because they have to score on every opportunity they have. But my big key is they need to establish a run game and be able to control the time of possession. If you limit USC's offensive time that they can have the ball, that limits the amount of time they can score. So my offensive key to the game is to get that ground game established, give it to Damian Martinez and Deshaun Fenwick, and let them pound it out and control the clock. With yours being a close second.
Yeah, I mean, I think they both kind of come
Hand
from
in
the same
hand.
place
Yeah.
of, you really have to value the ball in a game like this, where USC is probably going to score at will just because it has against everybody so far. Valuing the ball and making sure that you have it more often than not. That's how you win those kinds of games. Defensively,
This
Oregon
one, I
State
think we're
has
on the
to-
same. I think we have
Are-
the same page here.
Okay. You want to go then, or do you want me to?
Well,
You want me to start us
I'll
off?
go, because we have the same. I'm looking at your notes, and it's the same thing I have. And that's establishing a pass rush. Oregon State has got to put pressure on Caleb Williams, because I think we've seen when he's under pressure is when he isn't at his best. And that's not saying he's still not.
But that hasn't happened very often.
It hasn't happened very often. Exactly. So I would love to see Oregon State put some pressure on him, make him get out of the pocket, maybe force him into some bad decisions. Nobody's perfect, and he hasn't been pressured. So if Oregon State can establish that pass rush early, I maybe force a couple takeaways too. Again, it's keeping the ball out of their hands.
I'm not entirely confident in Oregon State's ability to generate pass rush against Caleb Williams. And that's more just the fact that we haven't seen it since Hamika Rashid left back in 2019, 2020. Under Trent Bray's leadership, it was something we expected to see more of. I think we saw a decent amount of pass rush against Fresno State. The Beavers just didn't get home against Jake Haener. And that's the key this week is, you can send as many guys to Caleb Williams as you want, but if you're not actually getting to him, if you're not forcing him to throw the ball away, if you're not sacking him, it doesn't matter. And quite frankly, then you're at a disadvantage because you have less guys downfield to tackle a Jordan Addison type, who is going to make plays with his hands and his feet. So it's not even just about generating the pressure. It's mostly about getting home and finishing the play, which is something that Oregon State's pass rush and front seven and defensive line have not done, like I said, for a couple of years. And if there is a week that they need to do it, it's this week. So a big week for that group for sure.
It's a huge group, or a huge week.
Those are our offensive and defensive keys to the game. If you come back here on Sunday, we're going to revisit those, kind of analyze how Oregon State did with regard to those three keys, because Angie had a separate offensive one from me. But with a couple of minutes we have left here, there's a note from Twitter today that, Angie, I really wanted to dive into and get your thoughts on, because it caught me by surprise when I saw it. So I really should have the tweet pulled up. In fact, I'm going to do so right now. Here we go. Max Meyer from Caesar Sportsbook tweeted out some insight from Caesars this morning, the official sportsbook provider of CBS Sports, by the way. More money has been bet on the Oregon State spread alone than any of the game spreads in the 16 NFL games this week.
That's crazy.
Incredible. And not just that, but there has been over 3 times more money placed on the Oregon State spread alone than any other college football game spread this week. I mean, like, these superlatives are just like, I mean, these
PM
are
in the
absurd.
chat just said someone placed 110,000 on the Beavers. So what do these guys know?
That's why I wanted to create a discussion around this, because this line, and again, I don't know what it opened at Caesars. You said earlier when we were on the phone that you thought it opened at 13.5. And if that's the case, then I see where this is coming from, because the rest of the market pretty much opened around, 7.5.
Yeah.
It's now down as low as 5.5 in USC's direction. So if Caesars did open at 13, I can see why all this money is being put on Oregon State to beat the spread. But I'm curious what people are seeing that lends them to believe Oregon State's going to cover the spread, because every time I come back to thinking about how I see this game unfolding, and every time I make a prediction, I say, man, I just don't see a world in which USC doesn't score at least 40 points. I don't see a world in which Oregon State keeps up enough and scores 40 to 50 points and wins this game. So to see this spread at 5.5 right now, how surprising is that to you?
Well, fans know what's going on. They're Super Trojan in the chat over here has kind of been funny. He's been popping off over here, and he said someone lost 110,000. But I thought maybe Superfan bet that 110,000, as confident as you are about your Trojans. You always have to take Vegas. I mean, people don't put that much money when they don't know something. So it's interesting to see. I'm not a bettor, so I'm not the best to talk sports betting with, because I'm too busy covering Oregon State that I just don't understand and I don't get it. So DraftKings did a promo bet where you only use their platform and get USC minus 13.5. Huh.
Good insight, PM, because I was curious. Angie brought up a 13 number earlier when we were talking on the phone, and I was like, that just doesn't seem right. So if that was where you saw that, Angie, that does make sense. But yeah, it was a little baffling to me when I woke up this morning and saw that tweet, and I was like,
that's
wait, what?
Crazy.
Like, everybody is on Oregon State.
But yet,
the fact that
nobody no big TV
this is the
wanted to
most
pick us up.
bet spread in football this week at any level. And it makes no sense to me, because Oregon State, by my estimation, I think more often than not, I'm landing on USC winning this game by multiple scores, more often than I am by Oregon State keeping it within a touchdown. So I don't know. I thought it was interesting, and I know you kind of agreed with me there. So
yeah. Like I said, you never know. Maybe, Jonathan Smith's been talking to someone and telling him, Jaquiz Rogers is suiting up or something and had one more year of eligibility.
I'll say this: there are
Brandon
lot
Cooks
of
is
Oregon
coming back.
There are a lot of Oregon State football fans out there this week. So if for nothing other than generating support for the program 1 week at a time, this is a positive trend for Oregon State. But before we get out of here, as we usually do, if we have the time, just want to highlight a couple of other Pac-12 games this weekend, because well, this is probably the biggest game in the conference this week. There are some others that are really intriguing.
Don't tell Washington State and Oregon that this is the biggest game, because Oregon fans think they are always the biggest game.
I know I'll have Cougar fans in my Twitter mentions for the next 3 days. Action on the West Coast gets started at 11 a.m. on the Pac-12 network, with UCLA going to Colorado. Dumpster fire in Boulder.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, UCLA is a 22-point betting favorite there.
Wow, and UCLA isn't even any good either, so that's kind of funny.
Number 15 Oregon goes to the Palouse, 6.5-point favorite at Washington State. That game's at 1 p.m. on Fox. So great exposure for the Pac-12 there, getting a 2-1 Oregon team going to a 3-0 Washington State team.
Who do you have on that one, Carter? Who do you pick to win that game? Just outright win. I don't care about. You have Oregon.
Yeah, I've got Oregon, and I would pick Oregon to cover that spread as well. I think Washington State, while that win at Wisconsin was impressive, the Badgers outgained them by like 100 yards. Washington State really struggled against Idaho in week 1. I don't know if it was a fluky win at Wisconsin, but I think the Cougars still have a ton to prove. I think if you're looking at 3-0 records in the Pac-12, Oregon State's is more impressive to me than Washington State's, even with that win at Wisconsin.
Okay.
In the afternoon, we've got Arizona going to Cal. This, of course, is a rematch of last year's COVID game, I guess you could call it, where Arizona played a Cal team that was without a ton of guys and got its lone win of 2021. Cal's the 3-point favorite there. Number 13, Utah goes to Tempe to face a Herm Edwards-less Arizona State team. No idea what to make of that game. Arizona State's probably either going to lose by 1 or 50. I don't think there's any in between there in their first game under an interim coach. What's your, before we don't have much time here, but just your thoughts on that situation in Tempe?
It had to be done. It was kind of surprising how they did it, like right after the game. Like that was kind of when you can watch it, right? The president and the AD meet him in the end zone, and you kind of know it's happening. But That's just a dumpster fire. Yeah. I mean, you had players leaving, you had the recruiting scandal. There's just a lot going on there.
I don't think we've seen the last of
No, we haven't.
the downfall of the Arizona State football program. Rounding out the schedule, another 7:30 game. That Utah ASU game's on ESPN. By the way, Stanford at number 18 Washington, 7:30 on FS1. Washington's a 13.5-point favorite there. Really interested to see if Washington can keep its momentum rolling after that big win over Michigan State last week. I think Stanford's the kind of team that could go in and give them some problems, like we see so often in those Pac-12 after dark games. One of those momentum killers there potentially. And I don't mean, I'm going to rant again, but what I don't get here is the Utah Arizona State being picked up by ESPN and Stanford Washington FS1 is fine, but how in the hell did Oregon State USC fall to Pac-12 net? I know it's been explained 57 times, and I just don't care. It's stupid. A discussion that I want to have next week when we preview the Utah game, because that game is also on the Pac-12 network.
Yes.
And is of a very similar caliber to this one. So a discussion for another time as we are out of time here. But thanks to everyone again for joining us live on short notice on YouTube. Thanks for finding us on your favorite podcast app. We're available pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts. And hopefully you get a chance to preview this game before you make it down to Corvallis on Saturday for Oregon State's game against number 7 USC, 6:30 p.m. at Reser Stadium. Game's televised on Pac-12 networks, as Angie just said. We'll be back here for another episode of the Damn Podcast on Sunday to recap the game
at 3:00.
3:00 on Sunday.
Yep.
We're sticking with the 3:00 theme this week for USC. Head to BeaverBlitz.com tomorrow, Friday, for staff picks, a couple of other little pregame content pieces as we wrap up our preview of this matchup. And then on Saturday, Beaver Blitz will be in Corvallis. Game thread, live updates, and some recap coverage as well. Until Sunday, Angie, we'll see you on Sunday. I won't see you at Reser. Eric will be there.
Yes.
But
I'm a casualty of a small press box, guys.
Yeah. This is we had a feeling this week there would be some casualties as far as the space in a.
But I will be doing the game thread. I will still have a game thread going live, and it'll be lit, as the kids are saying these days.
For Angie's lit coverage of Oregon State football, you can follow her on Twitter at Angie Machado 1. You can follow me at Carter Bahns. And we'll be back on Sunday for another episode of the Damn Podcast.